Welcome, my dear friends. It's fantastic to see you. In case we haven't been introduced before, I'm Stephen Clements, a writer, a gamer, and an appreciator of big brain activities in general. On this channel, I perform dramatic story readings, I provide role-playing game and movie reviews, and I get to talk to interesting people. And in this episode, we're continuing our discussions with an interesting person related to the role-playing game industry, maybe just a little bit like in his genetics, and that is Ernest Gary Gygax Jr., or more informally known as Ernie Gygax. Son of Dungeons & Dragons co-creator Gary Gygax, Ernie, and I have done a lot of recordings of him relaying his oral history, so that part of the first family of role-playing games history doesn't just disappear. He's got quite a memory on him. The level of detail that he summons routinely, it's pretty impressive. And in this episode, we're going to find out about when Gary Gygax became a cobbler, the new kittens they got, the desserts that they ate, and the most interesting job proposition for young Ernie as he was working as his father's cobbler apprentice. I had a lot of laughs in this episode, and I hope you do too. All right. Well, Ernie, it's good to see you again. And I believe we got some topics burning holes in your head that you just got to get out.
We do. But just before I turned 10 years old, several things happened. One was I finally learned how to ride a bicycle. A neighbor was letting me ride the bike right across from 330 Center Street on that slight hill going down. And so she would hold me and give me a push, and I'd get down there and then fall down at the bottom. But in no time at all, I learned how to ride a bike. So we were, of course, poor, and she was willing to sell that bike to my mom for $3. So I had it for a little while. And then at some point when I said, oh, I complained or I fell down some more, even though I'd finally gotten it. It's too big for me. So we got the $3 back. That's how poor we were in 1969.
Yeah, times were tough. I remember.
So when Dad was forced out of Fireman's Fund, and as I've already said, he tried metal spinning, which did nothing but bruise him up. And he was trying to write, but that at best, I think Alexander the Great might have made him $2,000 on his best royalty ever, which is a game. And Dunkirk would have done less. And I think the 2000 was when Avalon Hill picked it up. Before that, it was hundreds. And Don Lowry might have still owed. Because Don Lowry is who my dad was writing for the with the chainmail, Don't Give Up the Ship, and all those other products with Dave Arneson as well. Then my dad, we had to move the sand table out. I believe we talked about the sand table already, and how reinforced and wonderful it is. But at that point, Dad needed a career, and the country cobbler in downtown Lake Geneva, the husband died. And so they put up a sign saying shoe repair equipment for sale and training. My dad went there, and the family was a Sesselmans, and the son had no interest in being a shoe repairman, even though he had been raised and knew all about it. While he's in his suit, he would come. Well, of course, we had to move the sand table, which was disassembled by bucket of sand and all that, and taken over to Don Kay's house, to his garage. It's a little off-site garage that, in fact, I don't think there was not even a driveway going to it anymore. So it became the new game place. I just remember that in the winter, it was heated with diesel, so it always stank like a truck going by, but it still held our beautiful sand table and Dad's miniatures. And it was a lot better not having a sand table. So my dad with this shoe repair equipment, and no time at all, he learned. So he went from being a man who had been in a suit and tie to a man who was wearing blue jeans, doesn't matter what the shirt was, with a big apron that in no time at all started getting covered in shoe dye, sometimes some blood, because with all these different awls and pokers and hammers and nails that go in, not only hand-driven nails, but we had machines that would drive the nails in, as well as grinding wheels. So all that I got to learn with Dad. But again, I was just, I guess, not even quite 10 yet.
So that's one other thing that is on your list of dabbled skills.
Yes, I am. I could be a shoe repairman if I wanted to stay broke and make other people happy. But it would make people happy. And the trouble is that most modern shoes aren't repairable. They're just the neoprene or the rubber stuff. These all had to be leather, basically, or with attachable heels and with soles that we would cut off. My dad would do a heel job, I think was around $3. For about $1.25, we'd put a little metal or plastic things on the back if you were wearing your shoes uneven. But the only thing is it would clack. He'd also put hobnail boots, nails in your boots if you wanted, just like a good military man.
So
He
what
started,
would be the practical effect of a hobnail boot? Like, why would you want that?
it keeps the sole from wearing because it's lots of hobnails. You're walking on metal instead of on your rubber sole.
Oh, okay. Because I'm familiar with the term hobnail boots from fantasy literature, medieval literature, but I've never actually seen anyone wear them and I've never worn them. So, okay, well, thank you for educating me.
At least the Germans, World War II, most of their army had them, I think.
Okay.
It's a resource saver. But again, it takes away the ability of being quiet in any sort of building. Or we put taps on shoes. We did all sorts of things. So dad would have me help a little bit, and he even taught me how to pick stitches. That was a big job I had to do. If someone's replacing their sole, I'd have to take a knife and cut the old sole away, but it's still glued. And then we could slowly peel it back, and then we would cut it off evenly, and then we'd get whatever angle we wanted. We'd had a grinding so that when we put the other new one on, we'd make the angles fit perfectly. And of course, we used mostly just rubber cement, but we then needed to stitch it on. So at first, that meant all those old stitches that are in the shoes going around, I had to take a little hook and pull them one by one out. And then we'd clean up the shoe a bunch before I would then get to the next job, or dad most of the time put them in. There was this big machine where you'd set it into the shoe and then hold it and guide it as it goes around. And if you miss, it goes off the edge of the shoe. And then you have to pick those stitches, try to hide it, and continue again with a slight double over. So that didn't happen very much. But whenever it did, it made dad very unhappy. He's quite the perfectionist. And he became quite good at this job. So one thing he could sure have me do, and again, this was not good money, but he had me shining shoes all the time. So that was a skill that I developed pretty good. And I had my own apron. And later, much later, towards the end, Luke even had a little apron. And there's a fantastic little shot of that that'll show up sometime again with dad and Luke with their aprons and him with his little small hammer. Dad got him a small hammer and stuff like that too. So we used all kinds of hammers, French hammers, you name it. There was all the different widths and this and that. We had the polishing wheels were all attached to the same machine that had like 8 or 10 different grinding wheels. So it'd just be on one edge. That worked pretty good. I'm just trying to think with all this. And dad, it wasn't working great, but he got to see Playboy bunnies would come to the door. So if mom would shout down, oh, there's a lady, with some high heels, dad would always come upstairs, even though he normally would try to have mom take stuff and because he always wanted to talk to the bunnies. And
Obviously, why wouldn't you? It's just a polite thing to do. Someone came over, so you go and greet them. That's what you do as the man of the house, right?
Have you seen if you've seen pictures of the 330 Center Street, the basement steps were long, narrow, and thin with actually worn spots from people's feet, making an indentation on both sides going up and down. These stairs are from the 1800s.
Wow.
So, but it was fine. And he would, it was probably good for him. And one time Ruth Buzzy came with a pair of shoes when she was doing something at the Playboy Club. I don't know if you remember her, but she's the one with the purse that was in all kinds of comic routines, Laugh-In, as well as all
The
kinds
name
of.
sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, she would dress up like this little old lady with the hairnet and bash people with the purse when they would say something off color.
I've seen her before. I know it.
Yes. At that time, it was a big thing. Also, just a little bit before I turned 10, the neighbor girls called us up, Lisa and Penny Blodgett, and they said, you won't believe it, at the theater, it's the Jackson 5. They're in watching a movie. So that meant we had to call the theater and find out what time the movie was getting out. And we were Lisa and Penny and my sister Elisa and maybe Heidi. So baby Heidi. So I'm not sure of that, but I was out there. And as they came up, they all got ambushed by, pens and paper. So, but Michael Jackson ran off 1/2 block to where the limo was waiting right by the then Ben Franklin store, which is just kitty corner from 772 Main Street, later the Dungeon Hobby Shop in TSR. But I was able to keep up with him at those days at 9 years old. He was like my age, maybe 1 year older. I'm 64. I don't know what, I guess he would be 64 or 65.
If only. And just for clarification, the theater, when you said that y'all called up to see when the movie got out, it was a single screen theater?
At that time, then it later became a double screen.
Yeah, and that would have been a big deal. I remember back in the day when you might only have one movie showing at a theater. So you young folks, you don't know how many options you have.
It changed after that because when Star Wars came out, which I think was 74, it was either that or 77, but I'm pretty sure it was 74. They also came out with the movie A Bridge Too Far. And I remember happily once watching the whole movie on one side and then going and catching the second half of the other movie. I did that on 3 different occasions. I got to see each movie completely and then a whole bunch of each, again, with all this random. And so it would take me an extra hour, 2 hours. I loved The Bridge Too Far. And of course, Star Wars was crazy.
Of course.
Rob
Yeah.
Cruise 30 times to the theater, 30 times to see Star Wars.
Wow.
Even he would a tape recorder, and so the sound was there. Yeah, so I first went and got Michael's. Everybody else was getting, I think it was a Gino, and there was all the brothers. Young daughter, sister wasn't involved yet. Michael was a youngster. So I got right to the limousine, and I held out a piece of paper, and he signed it for me, and he went ducking in the limo. And as I came back, was it Jerome? The other ones, Tito was another one.
Yep.
And I got all those signatures, but my sisters and the other girls had gotten those signatures, but they all were Google over Michael Jackson. So I think I put it on my wall and Elisa was, just like, oh, well, I said, well, you got those other signatures. She says, I'll do it. I want anything. I got to have that signature. So then I made an agreement for 1 whole week. She was my slave and had to clean up after me and all this sort of thing. And then she got to keep that Michael Jackson autograph. I found that to be incredibly fun to see that she could be bought. So we just had to know. And Hardy was into somebody by the name of Tony DeFranco, and they had Tiger Beat was a magazine they both got, and it would have all these pictures of different young kids that were heartthrobs for the girls that were just starting to reach puberty. My sister still shared a room with me.
Any idea why the Jackson 5 were up there? Were they on vacation? Do we know?
Club.
Oh, they were playing a club.
Playboy Club. They're the Playboy Club. All kinds of people, George Burns and all kinds of people were there. It's just that we didn't go out there much because that takes money. And it was fancy, just like the Grand Geneva still is.
Yeah.
So, but Lake Geneva is a draw for all sorts of people and celebrities. It's been a draw since the 1866 or 67 when Ulysses S. Grant as a president came here.
Really? Wow.
We had a bus go through us in town when I was 10, 15 years ago. Whenever George Bush II was in office, we were waving on the street and it was, all that. They made you take all your dead cars or anything that wasn't moving anymore and tow them or push them over a block away so they couldn't be a bomb. That was another interesting thing. But again, this is waving all throughout the histories. But a lot's happened in life. It's very cool. It's very interesting.
So your dad in the shoe repair business, how long did he do that? And was that enough to get y'all by?
He did that until he could afford to get paid by TSR. So the only person they paid at a low wage was Tim Cass to start with. And then my dad and Brian Bloom might have started to get minimum wage. So, at that point, but we would play games while the shoe equipment was still there. And Dad would judge on the shoe repair side. And there was a cut where if he was sitting down, you couldn't see. You just hear him describing. But if he stood up, then you could see him and he could see you. So it helped cause more of a theater of the mind. Because it was all walled off, most of it, but there was this little area. So we would sit there on the other side. This is an old basement. It's like I said, we still were having oil heat and we were in downtown Lake Geneva. It was all fantastic and it's good memories. My dad had a Graham Wilson picture on the wall that said, from the Playboy days. And I said, my family was persecuted because of religious intolerance or persecution, blah, blah, blah. And it was somebody with a witch's book, it was obvious he was a warlock kind of thing. So that was kind of fun. And I remember taking it off the wall sometimes to look. And sure enough, there was something, but all it was a partially naked girl and a story about something. Because, that kind of thing was something to look at. It's that age, it wasn't for any sort of carnal knowledge as much as knowing everything that's around you. Interest rather than purient interest or whatever.
Well, also being bored and needing to take in any detail you could get that might possibly make you not bored for like a fraction of a second.
In the basement, we also had this little red globe that was stuck in a metal holder, and it said it was a fire extinguisher. But it was the only thing I could think of is you have to throw it at the fire, or the fire came underneath it because it was in the middle of the place. There was absolutely no propellant or anything like this. Maybe when it got hot, it would explode, but it was obviously some sort of red fluid, and it was from ancient times, 1920 or earlier. You know, so that was
Like
intriguing.
liquid asbestos or something.
It also came down like the old light bulbs used to have the bottom of it had the pin. You know, light bulbs weren't rounded; they had a little. Oh God, why can't I think of
Little prongs.
just a single thing,
Okay.
just a single thing. It came to a point instead of old light bulbs. That was fun. So yes, I went as a Jehovah's Witness. I went to Fontana a couple times, but this was when I finally had a bike, and that was 9 miles. And I'd ride there and hang out with the family for a bit. And we would one job that we had was going into this hill and digging in a certain spot, and it was filled with old medicine bottles, light bulbs. We once found a World War I gas mask that was in horrible condition. But there was this old guy that told us where everything was, and he would pay us. He was crippled up to bring him stuff. So that's what boys do. So we could have, fun money.
Heck yeah.
Riding 9 miles on a bike each way didn't bother me at all as a youth. But
Today we both die. That'd just be what it is.
But the bicycle, I didn't have a bike right then after we returned that. And I was like whining, I'm sure, as any kid would. And I think at some point, I guess I probably got the first bike. But that happened because we were going to Montgomery Wards every year, and they would have photos that a professional photographer would take of your family. So you'd get all the family together, and he would take maybe 10 different photos. And for $5, you got to keep a bunch of small ones and only one of the big ones. But then he would show you all the others because it's real hard to just say destroy them. But Mom was strong most of the years because, again, we were so poor. So there'd be crying going on as she's trying to get all of us clean and brush the hair. And then, of course, the kid starts wandering off and is in their dress, and I'm in a little suit and all those sorts of things that Mom would have so that she would have some. And she still has those wonderful pictures. But when we were down, I saw this red Stingray bicycle. And I got on it, I was going, whoa, whoa, whoa. So whether Dad would have liked the thing or not, for like $72 or so, I got my first real bike, a Stingray with a banana seat.
$72. Wow.
Yeah.
They liked you.
So, yes, that was a huge expense. And I still remember my dad once when Mom had gone and she was buying clothes for everybody. And she says, look at this. I saved $250 on these items. But he said, yeah, but you spent $1,200. And we don't have the $1,200. So they had to go to HFC Finance. And this is a young marriage. HFC Finance to take out a loan so they could pay off everything and do it over a longer period of time. And that was in downtown Lake Geneva as well. So, there's all these things that I remember well. And about that age is when my dad had some Playboys and penthouses hidden underneath a wheeled ottoman. At some point, Mom would just harass the crap out of him here and there. If you need that, and I'm not good enough, and this and that. Dad then said, well, go ahead and get a Playgirl. I don't care. So she went with me to the drugstore and she bought a Playgirl magazine. And we came home and blah, blah, blah. And what she was hoping to get, she didn't get. Dad wasn't all that interested. She showed him some pictures of penises and things. And he was like, well, that's okay. That's life. Oh, that I'm glad that you enjoyed that. She says, arr. So she then said, and it was like $4 or something in there, $5. So then she sent me back as a little boy to get the money back from this men's. I didn't like people at all. I was a real shy lad anyway.
But, oh my God. Did she give you a necklace made out of tampons to wear to do it? Oh, wow. I am sorry you went through that. Well, did you get the $4 back?
I got whatever it cost back, and Mom would put it there. We used to have to also get green stamps at the store, and when you'd fill up a whole book, it would get you $2. And sometimes Mom would let us get like a candy bar as well as buy something she really needed from the store when she'd fill a book of green stamps. And that
she was hoping that your dad would get jealous that she was looking at that, but he was okay with that because it's kind of like the comment that you related that she said, and that's a very common comment from women is, am I not enough for you? Well, you can be, but all these flowers are pretty. It doesn't hurt anything for me to look at them. I don't have to pluck them. You're the only one I have to pluck, but it's nice to see things.
Yes, and it's also though somewhat temptation, and especially if those flowers ever are friendly. But all right, enough said on that sort of thing. So I'll just continue in this vein. So at some time, again, I was probably 9 years old, and the girls somehow found the magazines, and it was Cindy would have been itty bitty, and Heidi and Elisa.
Oh
And so
my.
they went upstairs to the top floor. That's where our bath was. As they came out of the bath, they went in front of this wall-sized mirror that was just at the head of the steps. And they started grabbing their breasts and opening up their personal areas, saying, Playboy, Playboy, Playboy. So that was it. Then mom forced dad to get rid of all that or hide it better or something. And another time before that, she tried something that didn't work long term. He just started hiding them when he used to have those magazines around when I was just a baby. This is, of course, by secondhand information. But she and my Aunt Liz, who was just out of the convent, still wearing some of those kind of clothes. So they took an Spiegel, Montgomery Ward, and some other catalogs. And they took glue and they put clothes over all the naked women since Dad said, I'm really reading for the articles. Okay. That didn't fly, but that's the kind of battles, the wills that would go between my dad and my mom.
So modern folks have never known a different culture. Porn was a much bigger thing back then. There was a lot more pushback against it. And
Yeah.
maybe there should be today. I don't know. I'm not going to say. But this was real. These struggles were real, both for and against.
As I was doing all this shoe work, there was somebody who brought in a pair of beautiful leather shoes. His name was Gino, and he was a short but jolly little African American fellow. And he now do these shoes. He had Dad call me up. Said, "You're the boy that does the shining." And I said, "Yep." And he says, "If you do good enough on this pair, I'll bring you a better pair of boots. And if you do really good on that," he says, "I rather want to talk to you." So his name was Gino. I did those leather shoes as good as I possibly could. The old spit shine, the whole thing, with both, brushes, an edge dye, and all the regular things that we always did. And if something would have a scuff, we'd even try to use a darker shoe polish or whatever to help hide it, but not with these shoes. These were fine. Might have been, several $100 or more, back in 1970.
A lot of money.
So then he brought me some ostrich skin boots, full, yeah. And I polished those up. I don't know if I might have just used clear polish. Of course, you use a cleaning solution first when you're doing all this, which is also took brushes, and it looked like shoe polish, but it was, and I don't know why the name's slipping my mind, but I would clean up your stuff all the way first, look for imperfections and all this sort of thing. But I mean, like if we were going to put in a new heel, we would pull out the back of the tongue of inside your shoe to be able to access and then put nails in to the heels, then glue the thing back down so that you would never notice and it would all be clean and well attached. So, I mean, these were all wonderful skills. And what Gino then did, as he said, "How would you like a job? My place is at the Playboy Club. I have this concession thing where you would be handing out towels." And he says, "I'll take care of bringing you the towels. I'll even take care of the Vitalis and all the other things and the combs and the brushes for the fellas." And he said, "What I need you to do then is you're going to polish shoes. You get to keep all the money, but when it says all off the bathroom," he said, "but then," he said, "I'm going to need you to spray some silly stuff here and there in the urinals and call me if something's too yucky." So he guess he had some side responsibility to just maintain, even though there was a regular cleaning department. And he was the valet service. So that's where I think we'll leave that.
Oh, come on. You just whetting my appetite.
Yeah, well, that's true, but that's because there's too much to tell about with the Playboy Club. And again, I did this and I made more money than my dad at the time as a shoe repairman. So.
But he kept you fed and he kept the roof over your head until something better could happen.
Well, and that, okay, but I know you're trying to dig more, but I was at that point. Oh, we also went and got kitties once, since that's about the same time. Our first two kitties were over by Denison School, and it's a house that no longer exists. It's now an apartment building. But there was this family sitting out there as we were going out for a walk, as we always did down by the lake. Sometimes if we were coming back from fishing or he felt like it, we'd get Bittner's Bakery, lots of Linzer torts in particular, and and other donuts. But Linzer torts were raspberry, particularly some apricot. But we saw these kitty cats, and that was how our family got Sprinkle Nose and Tom, pair of brothers. And they were wonderful to me and not necessarily so wonderful for Mom, who had to deal with things in the house. And those kitties were the start of a whole world of kitties in the future, both for my family as well as my mother. To this day, is down just 1 to 9 cats in my home. Luckily, it's my home, so whatever damages cost, whatever, it's my mother, and that's okay.
So, or the two that you just mentioned, she didn't appreciate them pooping on things, probably spraying and clawing things.
Maybe, I don't know if the spraying might have occurred, but it wasn't real bad. But they both ate a lot of wild critters. They would go in and out.
Yep.
And so Sprinkle Nose and Tom, one of them would sit in the grass and get the squirrels and the birds complaining, while the other one would sneak around the house and come back and work up to the tree and jump on it. And then they would share the food together.
Wow, they were smart.
Yeah, they were
Tactics
smart.
for cats.
So that worked real well because you'd hear all that, there's a squawk that the squirrels make, as they were trying to keep, warning, there's a cat. So the cat would just lay out there with his tail wagging like, oh yeah, I'm here. And then while his brother would get stuff, but somehow Sprinkle Nose didn't get worms and Tom always did. He'd somehow get worms from different things he'd eat. And then he'd disgrace the rugs. And so Mom was cleaning up that kind of thing. And she was very unhappy. So then I didn't know it, but Sprinkle Nose was gone. And then she gave Tom away to a farm about 1.25 miles away because she couldn't stand all this. He would lose so much weight, and we have to do dewormers, which was probably more expensive and all this. And then, so I'd been 2 weeks without both cats. And then I was out by the garbage cans, but probably taking something out there, which were hidden in those days over by the back door that was down to the basement for the games. And I go, oh, Mom, the cat's back. The cat's back. She goes, oh, really? How's Sprinkle Nose doing? I said, oh, no, Mom, it's Tom. And he'd come back over 1 mile away, find his home. And that meant I kept him for several more weeks before she somehow gave him away again. She wasn't always a total softie, enough work. And plus, we always had to I had to vacuum at 330 Center Street. That was with an old Electrolux that would ride on rails with just wheels on the back end for some reason as you'd pull it around. And it worked all right, but it would constantly blow wall outlets and we could get those restarted again. But I'd have to take the inside, remove the cardboard, unscrew and chop off the broken ends and shorten it a little bit with the knife and put new ends over the screws to make connection again. So that was something Dad taught me right away because it was my responsibility, the vacuuming. And dishes, we fought over dishes horribly. I tried to get out lots. I did get out of raking finally. I figured out how just when it was going to be raking day, I just would be gone all day, just disappear. Not even if I could hear Mom, I was just gone. I was not coming back.
Ernie.
Learning how to do and think for myself.
Shirking your raking duties, enslaving your sister. I mean, harassing poor little Michael Jackson. You're quite the villain, young man.
It gets worse than that later, but at this point, we're still dealing with like 9, 10 years old. So
kids are funny. They're weird.
We'd have screens and windows as well, because you'd actually have to take those off. Those are the big screens, and we had a whole screen porch. And then for all the regular windows in the house too, because there was no air conditioning. Yep. And I was fortunate to be able to find, or Mom got us this huge big blue on a heavy duty stand, wind something, but it was wind shear or whatever. It was a big vat, like 30 inches around, whatever else. It would just make so that way we could stay cool at night to sleep because it was very hard in the hot weather to sleep in that house.
I bet. I've heard plenty of stories about how people get creative to lower the temperature so they can friggin' sleep during the summer. I imagine in the winter you didn't have any problem with being too hot, but it is what it is. Question. The husband died from the shoe repair business, and then your dad bought all their equipment and then put it in the basement?
But grandmother bought it. Grandmother murdered Dad's mom because we were over at the house a lot, and she just bought us a color TV because there was some problems with their black and white. So she was doing nice things, but she had a husband, and we used to come over to see Murmur when we started coming by a lot in the afternoon, that's when she upgraded our TV. Because and her husband Walter would have a 1 to 3 o'clock nap, and they wanted to get rid of the kids. And I hope that was because they were still amorous, but I have no idea. That was her third husband. So she liked fellas. So anyway, Grandma was great, and life was generally good for us. It's never one way or the other, but all in all, I really was happy to have 2 folks in my home.
That's awesome. Well, that'll do for now. Thank you, sir. That's good. We'll catch you later.
Thank you.
So wasn't that interesting? And particularly that bit towards the end of, wait a second, somebody's trying to employ a small child as a shoeshine boy at a legendary adult club? Oh, the past was a different time. Well, in the future, we do get more details on that foray into the Playboy Club, now the Grand Geneva Resort. So come back in a future episode, because that memory Ernie's got, he remembers all the details. So if you enjoyed this, please give us a like and a subscribe. And if you want to talk to Ernie, just find him on his Facebook page. He will talk to anyone at any time, pretty much. And so, my dear friends, that's what I've got for now. Until I see you next time, I wish you nothing but the best.